I don't think that we can ever have peace with my family unless the truth is out there. On a quiet Tuesday evening in Montecito, the neighborhood is peaceful. The rich and famous are tucked away in their mansions. But inside one particular home, something terrifying is happening. Prince Harry is found unconscious on his bathroom floor. His security team called paramedics who quickly arrived at the scene. But what's shocking is that his wife, Meghan Markle, is nowhere to be found. What really happened that night? And how did a prince end up in such a dangerous situation? Stick around because this story will completely change how you see the Sussex family forever. The night everything changed. The emergency call came in at 11:47 p.m. A frantic voice reported an unconscious man at a luxury estate in Montecito. What the dispatcher didn't know was that this was Prince Harry, and the situation was far worse than anyone imagined. David Langdown, Harry's longtime bodyguard, had been making his routine security check when he discovered something that would haunt him forever. The former Scotland Yard officer, who had protected Harry for over a decade, found the prince collapsed in his master bathroom, and Harry was barely breathing. Langdown immediately called 911, but sources close to the situation reveal he also made another call. He contacted the palace emergency line, a number reserved for the most serious royal crises. Within minutes, phones were ringing in London, and the royal damage control machine was already spinning into action. The paramedics who arrived at the scene reportedly found evidence that this wasn't a simple medical emergency. According to insider reports, there were clear signs of substance abuse. Empty bottles, white powder residue, and drug paraphernalia were scattered around the bathroom. Harry had to be given emergency treatment, just to stabilize his vital signs before being rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle was photographed at the exclusive Soho house, laughing and socializing with friends. She was seen sipping cocktails and posing for photos, completely unaware, or so it seemed, that her husband was fighting for his life just miles away. The moment Harry's ambulance left the estate, something strange started happening. The usual media sources that would normally jump on any royal emergency stayed completely silent. No paparazzi showed up at the hospital. No reporters called for comments. It was as if the entire incident had been erased from reality. This wasn't an accident. Palace insiders revealed that within hours of Harry's hospitalization, a team of crisis managers, lawyers, and media specialists had been deployed from London. Their job was to make sure this story never saw the light of day. King Charles was personally notified about his son's condition, but instead of rushing to support Harry, the palace focused on containing the situation. They contacted major news outlets, reminding them of their agreements regarding royal privacy. They reached out to hospital staff, ensuring strict confidentiality agreements were signed. They even had social media monitored for any mentions of ambulances or emergency services in the Montecito area. The truth is, this wasn't the first time they had to clean up Harry's messes. For years, the royal family had been quietly dealing with Harry's substance abuse problems. From his wild teenage years to his military service, there had been incident after incident that required careful management. But this time felt different. This time, Harry's life had actually been in danger. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, an addiction specialist who has treated several high-profile clients, explains that what Harry experienced sounds like a classic overdose situation. The combination of alcohol and drugs can cause respiratory depression, where the body simply stops breathing. Without immediate medical intervention, it can be fatal within minutes. But to understand how Harry ended up fighting for his life, we need to go back to where it all began. The pattern of destruction. His struggles with substances began decades earlier, right under the royal family's nose. As early as 2002, when Harry was just 17, there were already whispers about his experimentation with drugs. Palace staff reported finding marijuana in his room at Highgrove House. Instead of addressing the problem directly, Prince Charles reportedly hired private counselors and tried to handle everything internally. But the situation only got worse. Harry's friends from that era describe a young man who was clearly struggling with the loss of his mother, but had no healthy ways to cope. He would disappear for days, showing up at parties completely out of control. He once allegedly snorted vodka through his nose at a private gathering, a dangerous practice that could have killed him instantly. The military years were supposed to be Harry's salvation, but they only masked the problem. During his time in the army, Harry's drug use allegedly continued, but it was carefully managed by palace officials. Sources claim that whenever surprise drug tests were scheduled, Harry would mysteriously be sent on training exercises or overseas assignments. The few times he couldn't avoid testing, the results were either buried or the samples were somehow compromised. One particularly shocking incident occurred in 2008 during his deployment in Afghanistan. Harry was reportedly found unconscious in his barracks after combining prescription painkillers with alcohol. The official report stated he had food poisoning, but medical personnel on the scene tell a different story. They describe finding Harry in a state consistent with drug overdose, requiring immediate medical intervention. The infamous naked billiards photos from 2012 showed Harry's party lifestyle, but they didn't reveal the full extent of his substance abuse. People who were present that weekend describe a man who was consuming dangerous amounts of alcohol and drugs. He allegedly passed out multiple times and had to be revived by hotel staff. What's most disturbing is that instead of getting Harry professional help, the palace focused on managing the media narrative. They spun the story as a young prince letting off steam, portraying it as harmless fun rather than the cry for help it actually was. Meghan Markle joins the scene. When Meghan entered Harry's life in 2016, many hoped she would be a stabilizing influence. She presented herself as health-conscious, focused on wellness and mental health advocacy, but according to sources close to the couple, the reality was very different. Instead of helping Harry overcome his addictions, Meghan allegedly became part of the problem. People who knew her before her royal days described someone who was no stranger to recreational drug use. At her first wedding in Jamaica, guests report that she personally rolled joints and included them in gift bags, putting international travelers at risk of serious legal trouble. Meghan's mother, Doria, also had connections in California's underground scene. While these ties were never fully investigated, they raised questions about where Harry might have been getting his supplies. Some insiders suggest that Meghan's family connections made it easier for Harry to access dangerous substances. But the most disturbing allegation is that Meghan may have been using Harry's addiction to control him. Addiction specialists explain that when someone is dependent on substances, they become extremely vulnerable to manipulation. The person who controls their access to drugs essentially controls their entire life. Several sources close to the Sussex household suggest that Meghan used this dynamic to keep Harry isolated from his family and completely dependent on her. This would explain why Harry's substance abuse seemed to get worse after their marriage, not better. Instead of supporting his recovery, Meghan allegedly enabled his destructive behavior while simultaneously presenting herself as the victim of royal racism and media harassment. The move to California was supposed to be a fresh start for Harry and Meghan. Video published to his Sussex royal Instagram page. Prince Harry has just publicly addressed the decision by him and his wife Meghan to leave their royal lives behind. They talked about mental health, about healing, about building a better life for their children. But behind the carefully crafted public image, things were falling apart. Harry's substance abuse escalated dramatically after leaving the royal family. Without the palace's careful management and protection, his behavior became increasingly erratic. Neighbors in Montecito reported seeing emergency vehicles at the Sussex home on multiple occasions, though these incidents were never reported in the media. The night Harry was found unconscious was the culmination of months of dangerous behavior. Sources describe a man who was consuming alcohol from morning until night, mixing prescription drugs with illegal substances, and showing clear signs of mental breakdown. What makes this situation even more tragic is that Harry had been asking for help. In recent months, Harry had reportedly reached out to old friends and even some family members, expressing his desire to get clean. He talked about feeling trapped, about wanting to be a better father to his children, about missing his old life. But every time he tried to take steps toward recovery, something would derail his progress. Some people close to the situation believe that Meghan was sabotaging Harry's recovery attempts. They describe incidents where she would introduce alcohol or drugs just when Harry was trying to stay sober, or where she would create dramatic situations that would trigger his substance use. What happened at the hospital that night revealed just how close Harry had come to losing everything. The hospital stay that changed everything. When Harry was rushed to the emergency room that October night, doctors found his system flooded with a dangerous combination of substances. According to medical sources, he had consumed alcohol, cocaine, prescription painkillers, and possibly other drugs. His blood alcohol level was nearly 3 times the legal limit, and his heart rate was dangerously low. The medical team worked for hours to stabilize him. They had to use emergency medications to counteract the drug interactions and prevent organ failure. For several hours, it was unclear whether Harry would survive the night. During this life-or-death struggle, Meghan remained at her exclusive club, posting photos on social media and acting as if nothing was wrong. She didn't arrive at the hospital until nearly 6 hours after Harry was admitted, and when she did show up, witnesses described her behavior as cold and calculating rather than concerned. The palace's response was swift and brutal. Within hours of Harry's hospitalization, a team of royal lawyers and PR specialists had descended on California. They immediately began damage control, ensuring that hospital staff signed strict confidentiality agreements and that any potential witnesses were contacted and warned about speaking to the media. King Charles was reportedly furious. Not just about Harry's condition, but about the potential scandal. The royal family had spent years protecting Harry from the consequences of his actions, and now his behavior was threatening to destroy the monarchy's reputation. Harry spent 3 days in the hospital, officially being treated for exhaustion and dehydration. The real story was much more serious. He had suffered minor organ damage from the drug overdose and required intensive medical monitoring to ensure his recovery. During his hospital stay, Harry reportedly had moments of clarity where he realized how close he had come to death. He spoke about wanting to change his life, about getting clean, about being a better father. But these moments were brief, and the addiction quickly reasserted its hold on him. Meghan's behavior during this period was particularly troubling. Instead of staying by Harry's side, she was seen at multiple social events, networking with potential business partners and working on her public image. She gave interviews about mental health awareness while her husband was literally fighting for his life. The most shocking revelation came from Harry himself. During one of his lucid moments in the hospital, Harry reportedly admitted to a nurse that he felt like he was being poisoned. He said he couldn't understand why he felt so terrible all the time, why he couldn't think clearly, why he felt like he was losing his mind. The nurse, bound by confidentiality, couldn't report what Harry had said, but the implications were terrifying. Was Harry's substance abuse entirely self-inflicted, or was someone else involved? The question haunted the medical staff who treated him and continues to be whispered about in royal circles. The return home and continued decline. When Harry was finally released from the hospital, he returned to a home that had been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized. Any evidence of drug use had been removed, and the house looked like a normal family residence. But the problems that had nearly killed him were still there, just better hidden. Meghan immediately began controlling Harry's access to information and people. She limited his contact with friends and family, monitored his phone calls, and made sure he was never alone with anyone who might encourage him to seek help. She presented this as protective behavior, but addiction specialists recognized it as classic enabling and control tactics. The palace's silence became deafening. Despite Harry's near-death experience, the royal family made no public statements about his condition or recovery. There were no visits from family members, no expressions of concern, no offers of support. The message was clear: Harry was on his own. This abandonment may have been the final nail in the coffin of Harry's relationship with his family. He had always felt like an outsider, but now he truly was. His substance abuse had become too dangerous and too public for the palace to manage. So they simply cut him off. Throughout all of this chaos, one person remained constant in Harry's life: his bodyguard David Langdown. The former Scotland Yard officer had seen Harry at his best and worst, had protected him from external threats, and now found himself trying to protect Harry from himself. Langdown had been with Harry for over 15 years, from his wild teenage years through his military service and into his married life. He had quietly cleaned up countless messes, prevented numerous scandals, and always maintained his professional discretion. But finding Harry unconscious that night had shaken him to his core. Sources close to Langdown describe a man who was deeply conflicted about his loyalty to Harry versus his duty to protect him. He had watched Harry's condition deteriorate over months, had seen the warning signs, and had even quietly suggested that Harry seek professional help. But his role as a bodyguard meant he couldn't force the issue. The night he found Harry unconscious, Langdown later told friends, was the worst moment of his career. He had seen combat, had faced downed terrorists, had dealt with life-threatening situations countless times, but nothing had prepared him for the possibility that the man he was sworn to protect might die from his own actions. Langdown's quick thinking and immediate response saved Harry's life. His knowledge of first aid, his calm under pressure, and his ability to coordinate with emergency services meant that Harry received help within minutes of being found. Without Langdown's intervention, Harry would likely have died that night. But even with his bodyguard's dedication, Harry's problems were far from over. In the months following Harry's hospitalization, his condition has reportedly continued to deteriorate. Despite the near-death experience, he has been unable to overcome his addictions. Sources describe a man who's increasingly paranoid, isolated, and dependent on substances to function. Meghan's control over Harry has only intensified. She has reportedly hired additional security staff, not to protect Harry from outside threats, but to monitor his behavior and prevent him from seeking help. She controls his medication, his access to money, and his contact with the outside world. The couple's public appearances have become increasingly rare, and when they do appear together, Harry often looks unwell. His weight has fluctuated dramatically. His speech is sometimes slurred, and he appears confused or disoriented. These signs are consistent with ongoing substance abuse and possible medication misuse. The royal family's response to Harry's health crisis has been notably cold and calculated. Despite his near-death experience, there has been no public expression of concern from King Charles, Prince William, or any other family members. The official palace position seems to be that Harry is no longer their responsibility. This abandonment is particularly striking given the royal family's history of protecting Harry from consequences. For decades, they covered up his mistakes, managed his scandals, and protected his reputation. But his substance abuse and the potential for public exposure has apparently crossed a line they're not willing to cross. Palace insiders suggest that the royal family views Harry as a liability they can no longer afford. His unpredictable behavior, his potential for public breakdowns, and his association with Meghan have made him too dangerous to support. They have apparently decided that it's better to cut him off completely than to risk further damage to the monarchy. This decision has reportedly devastated Harry, who despite his rebellious behavior, has always sought his family's approval and love. The realization that they have truly abandoned him has only deepened his spiral into addiction and despair. One of the most disturbing aspects of Harry's situation is how completely the media has cooperated in covering it up. Despite numerous incidents, hospital stays, and obvious signs of substance abuse, the press has remained largely silent about Harry's real condition. This silence is particularly striking given the media's usual appetite for royal scandals. The same outlets that dissect every detail of royal life have somehow missed or ignored one of the most serious health crises in recent royal history. This media blackout has had serious consequences. Without public scrutiny, Harry's condition has been allowed to deteriorate without intervention. The people who might have been able to help him don't know the full extent of his problems, and the public pressure that might have forced action has been absent. Prince Harry's story is far from over, but the direction it's heading is deeply troubling. From a beloved royal to a man fighting for his life against addiction, his journey shows us the devastating impact of untreated trauma and the importance of real support systems. The question that remains is whether anyone will step in to help Harry before it's too late, or whether we'll be witnessing the slow destruction of a prince who never got the help he desperately needed. Share your thoughts in the comments below.